Your gallo's gone. You took
Chuck
it.
the Gallo.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's delicious. It was like a good palate cleanse.
Yeah.
It was just like
I don't drink. I just
scallop.
this is just a prop.
It
Um,
looks like it could be pickle juice, maybe.
yeah, well, I don't like pickles.
Really?
Yeah, it's not
Do you ever have a
favorite.
pickle back?
What is that?
It's like a shot of pickle juice and a shot of Jameson or whiskey.
Oh, I've
It's
never
fantastic.
had that.
It's fantastic.
But
Yeah.
I was thinking you were talking about like a hot dog or something. But it's a drink.
It is not a hot dog, but like a hot dog, it is violently underrated. Like it is like,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah, you know your drinks. You actually go
I
order some fancy drinks at the bar.
it's not a fancy drink. It's like probably the lowest.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's literally a shot of whiskey and a shot of pickle juice.
The following is part of a 2-episode pilot as R&D to hopefully get my community of executives, founders, and investors excited about a potential full season of episodes chatting with unique leaders and getting a different, more holistic take on their approach to life, leadership, and success. Today, I'm chatting with Patrick Burns on everything from his past life as a reporter traveling the world to his product leadership journey across big names like Google, Snapchat, and Amazon, to founding and selling his own company and now entering his next chapter. Let's dive right in.
Welcome to Level 380. My name is Lucy, and I have my lovely guest, Patrick Burns. So excited to have you here, Patrick. Patrick has been very inspirational to me. He actually started out his career as a reporter and even has an Oscar-nominated film. And Patrick and I have both worked in product, and Patrick has been at several major companies in product leadership roles, including Google and Snap, as well as Discord. And he has even started his own company and sold it, Commons, which was remote collaboration for teams. And he's
Did a lot
on
of
to his
research.
next chapter at
Did a lot of
Maintain
research, huh?
Yes. I mean, I think that in particular, Patrick and I, we haven't known each other for that long. I think we might have met like maybe a year,
No. We met like
4 or 5 years ago.
we met like a while ago.
Oh,
before COVID.
Actually, yeah. So we
Yeah.
met a while ago, but I hadn't, it was like a networking event. And, I don't think we kept that much in touch.
Yeah.
But one day Patrick reached out to me out of the blue, and, we kind of connected over the fact that, one, Patrick has a lot of has that sort of creative background, and that kind of permeates throughout your entire career. But also you've been kind of dipping into the more production side, and doing some DJing on the
With
side
music,
as well,
yeah,
and
yeah.
music, and has a passion for music. And so we connected over that. And so I'm really excited to have Patrick
Same
as
here.
numero uno guest on
Wow.
the podcast.
This is where it all starts.
Anyway, I have Patrick's LinkedIn profile memorized because I got to do my homework.
Impressive.
But I love the common thread throughout your entire career. And I think, particularly for me, I've always been sort of this hybrid between the creative side as well as figuring out how to balance that with product as well as leadership and, just bringing our visions to life. So I think we share a lot of commonalities there.
Totally. I am equally inspired by you. And there's very few people who are can kind of navigate both worlds.
Yeah.
And they're two very very different worlds. Like the sort of like in this case like music world and the traditional technology startup world. It's really hard to. It's almost like speaking two languages,
Yeah.
And so, yeah, equally inspired by you. And I honestly don't know how you do it because I find that it's hard to get. It's like using two different parts of your brain, and you have to make time for it. So
yeah, for sure. I think I've also, and we'll kind of get into this, but I think I've learned a lot along the way in terms of like how to use how to create time for it, because I think, and I don't know if I can refer to Chase here. I can refer to Chase, I mean, I think that sometimes I approach my creative work in the same way that I approach like my work, which is like I'll time box it, I'll create like a ritual for it, and then I'll like come back and do it. But then oftentimes I find myself kind of like banging my head against the wall and being like, oh my God, I just spent 3 hours and I did nothing.
Yeah.
And I think it's a similar experience to when you're doing creative work at work, when you're kind of coming up with like product ideas and you're incubating, and you kind of have to be in a very special headspace for that.
Yeah.
And you don't want to put that headspace in the time box headspace, like, or in the I expect to get something out of this headspace, because then you might come out of it having nothing, and then you go into the shower and then like your best idea comes there and you're like, why did I spend so much time thinking about this? So
Yeah.
I think it's anyway, we'll get into that.
But even there, like I totally understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Have you read the new Rick Rubin book about creativity?
I haven't, but I think you actually
really
recommended it.
It came out maybe a year or two ago.
Yeah.
But his whole methodology is kind of challenges that idea that you have to be, I have to be in the right place. It's like, no, you have to get into the habit of constantly creating things.
Yeah.
And even if it's most things you create are not going to be great.
Yeah.
Most of them are going to be rough drafts. And the more that you do, the better you'll get at it, and the better you'll get at finding that 1 or 2 out of the 100 that you make that are actually really amazing.
Yeah.
So, because I struggled a lot with that, like when I was younger, of trying to, I can never get in the right headspace. I need to be in the right headspace to do this. And I'm like, no, you just need to do it. You need to and almost create a habit out of it in a way.
Yeah, I think it's like a balance.
Yeah.
Because the main thing is just you don't want to like force it when it's not there.
Yeah.
But I agree that like it is important to create the space for it. And so that your mind is like primed for it.
Yeah.
But I do want to get into that. But I want to start with a couple of things. I think so, like rewinding back a little bit. I think that we connected because I think we're talking about this. You were exploring how to bring a little bit more. Or actually, I think it's just hard to find, as you mentioned before, it's just hard to find people in sort of product and business and leadership that have figured out how to weave maybe their creative passions into their careers, and in a way that's maybe a little bit more than a hobby. I think everyone probably has some side pursuits, but it's not something that like shows up as much in what they do. Now, I think for you, like I do see this common trend where I think a lot of the work that you've done, whether it be at Snap or Google, or I'm missing one obvious one.
Discord?
No. Amazon.
Yes.
Yeah. A lot of your experiences have actually kind of centered around like consumer, like creative experiences, innovation experiences, things that kind of require creativity, which is why I can see like this nice little storytelling balance with you kind of working in sort of a journalism type of space early on in your career. I am excited to kind of hopefully, with this podcast and, we can kind of inspire more people to kind of look into different parts of themselves and bring more of that to the fore. I mean, honestly, out of like, there's a lot of like creative tech entrepreneurs. I want to like acknowledge that, but I want to see more. Like I want to see more of that blending of those two languages in the space. And it's just funny because like when I think about like really famous people who have kind of bridged the gap, like I think of people like John Legend, who did like consulting and then went into and became like a Grammy-winning artist. And then, I think of the Goldman Sachs CEO, who's a DJ, but I'm like, okay, cool. Let's add a couple more to that sort of like icon list.
Yeah.
But I'd love to kind of just talk a little bit about kind of, your career journey from from your point of view and kind of like how you approached it. Did you feel like you had a path? Did you kind of have like a direction that you were going in, or did it kind of like just naturally happen the way it happened?
Honestly, no path, no
Yeah.
direction, no idea what
Yeah.
I wanted to do for the longest time. Um, I think coming out of college, I
What did you study?
studied like political science,
Okay.
and I had this idea. I studied abroad in Europe, and I traveled a lot. And it was the first time I'd been outside of the United States. Well, it's not true. I'd been to Mexico, but the first time I'd been to Europe, and it was really eye opening. And I was like, I really want to find a way to have a job where I can travel abroad. And it's very romanticized idea of like,
Your wanderlust era.
yeah, and like and you know and I was like, oh, I could be like, oh, a foreign correspondent, like that's like a
Yeah.
you know I had no background in journalism, didn't like but that was like what I anchored on. And I so that was I think like the first, maybe like in my early 20s, like what I wanted to do. And what I quickly realized is, and this is maybe like a theme throughout my life, is like mixing the passion with the pragmatism, like knowing when to sort of like veer into pragmatic mode versus like passion mode, if you want to call it, or intuition versus practicality,
Yeah.
whatever words you want to use. And so it was pretty clear to me that the world, when I was like working in journalism, the world of journalism was going to be like severely challenged, disrupted by the internet, by all these, different business models. And I was like, well, I don't want to like be on this is like obviously losing side of this battle.
Yeah.
And so that's when I was
observant that at that time.
Honestly, like it was obvious. It was like
Yeah.
this is obviously still true today. Like every media company was like constantly laying off tons of people.
Yeah.
And I think at that point I was like, well, this was really interesting, and like I got to travel around the world. And
so you actually like you went and did the whole thing.
I like went to I speak a little Spanish, and so I like went to Latin America. I went to like Cuba and Haiti, and
I always wondered that because you
Chile.
show me a lot of like international music and maybe some Latin songs. So
yeah, but the music thing like is interesting because I was thinking about this a couple of days ago, where I was always attracted to really unique types of music from different places. And I remember, and I would go super deep on like a certain genre. And I went like in college, it was like classic rock and blues and a lot of like folk and indie rock and all that stuff. And then I moved to Japan. I taught English in Japan right after college for like almost a year. And I got really into like electronic music because I went to these like still to this day, the most amazing parties and clubs I've ever been to in my entire life.
Yeah.
In Tokyo. And I was like, this is unbelievable.
Yeah.
And I went to electronic music world, but then I would travel to Cuba for work, and I was like, oh my God, salsa music is the most beautiful music in the entire world.
Very different.
Very different.
Yeah.
And I got like obsessed with Brazilian music. And
that was the one you sent me, right? Like
which one?
There was a song called Veneno.
Vinicius de Moraes?
Something. Starts with a Vene something N-O. I don't know if I'm spelling
Was it
right.
a modern song or old song?
It was a new song, but it was in a different language. And it had like a girl's head. I will send it to you later. Actually, I'll search it up later.
Yeah. 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 It's just, I don't know. Like, I think, and that honestly is also even today, like and this is like where the sort of like the music side mirrors like the rest of like my approach. Like I'm definitely not when I actually back to Japan. In Japan, the culture there is very much around like narrow and deep. Like you pick one thing that you want to do with your life and you go deep on that thing.
Mm.
You're a sushi chef.
Yeah.
You're like, you want to make vintage denim.
Right.
And like you will become an expert on that. You want to make handcrafted cabinetry. And a friend of mine there was like, yeah, Japanese are like narrow and super deep. Americans are very broad and shallow. And I was like, wow, I love that. I love that analogy. It makes a lot of sense. And I'm very much the epitome of that.
The broad and shallow.
Broad and like but even with music, I like a ton.
Yeah.
And it's actually randomly challenging sometimes because I'm like, when I make music, I'm like, oh, I really want to make I'm really loving this like piano kind music sound that's like really popular these days.
Yeah.
And I'll like make a song, and then like a week later I'm like, I'm really loving this like ambient stuff these days. And so like it's really hard to like but it's fine. Like I don't
want to have it all.
Yeah, but I also don't think, for me, like I'm totally jumping around here. So
no, it's okay.
I have come to terms with like, based on this, a lot of like the stuff that Rick Rubin talks about, and even like David Lynch has an amazing book that's very similar. It's about his creative process, and it's called Catching the Big Fish. And I like read it almost every year. It's like just very similar. It's just his approach to like getting into the creative mindset. And they're very similar in that both of them are very much about, make it a habit, make it a process that you do. And in that way, there's always output. And you can always, your first draft of most things is going to be horrible. And you will constantly want to like doubt, but you have to constantly fight that and just actually focus on output.
Actually, I mean, I think I'm also sort of helping your derailment, but I think that
you have to derail.
Yeah, we'll be on the rail of the derailing.
We can stay lost the whole time.
I think the the one thing that kind of pulls a lot of that together in my mind, or like reconciles it, is it's not necessarily whether it's a habit or a headspace or a or a non-habit, and it's just like a spark of inspiration. I think a lot of it is just getting really comfortable with allowing your mind to not be pressured. And I think that, like, even in a habit situation, you're practicing that almost like a creative meditation of sorts. Or for some people, just the creation of the habit may feel like pressure. And so for them, their process might just be, hey, like, I'll just have a little buffer time throughout the week. And if something hits, and I just let it happen. And so I think, like, if I were to go up a layer, I actually think that all of these are really great techniques for kind of like allowing yourself to tap into the deepest part of yourself, which I ultimately think is sort of the essence of creativity, which is like, what are those connections that like you as a human intuitively feel, that like you might not necessarily be able to bring into surface when you're, managing all of the external factors that you need to like be mindful of. And so, that's why too, I think it's one of those things where it's like, again, almost like a meditation and a skill to be able to do that while navigating the world. It's like, you're like mixing between passion as well as pragmatism. And the reality is like the passion is actually your guiding factor. And then the pragmatism is actually how you make your strategic decisions such that your passion actually be realized. And so it's almost about just like, you have both of them, but understanding that one is in service of the other as a, so I don't know how I just started to like, you said some stuff and then things made sense to me.
Makes a lot of sense. It sounds, it's very Jungian in nature.
Yeah.
Like your intuition is guiding you.
Yes.
And whether you know it or not.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I think the common thing, I think, is just very natural for us as humans is to create a division that doesn't exist. What do they call it? There's like a term.
False dichotomy?
False dichotomy. Thank you. And
I prefer division.
There was another term too. There was creating a negative whatever. I'll come up with it. But there was something more negative, you know, that they
dissonance, cognitive dissonance. No. Fake wall.
I'll come back to fake wall. I like fake wall. But the thing is, it's never like just about the heart or the mind. It's not about like follow your passion. Like it's like none of those things exist in a silo. I mean, they're meant to be said as like a spirit gist type of thing. But the reality is, okay, like, yes, the goal is to actually truly follow your passion, because the passion is like, what's the point of living if you're not living your passion?
Mm-hmm.
But you can't just, or, you know, bringing your full self to work. Like, what's the point if you can't? But gravity exists. So therefore, in order to follow your passion, to bring your passion to life, to bring your full self to life, you have to actually use strategy, and you have to actually use all the like other things that like you do to get there.
Yeah.
But they don't live in isolation. It's just that they are different parts of the, you know, pillar.
It's interesting because you reminded me of something that Scott Galloway talks about a lot. Do you know this?
Yes, I listen to Scott often.
Yeah, I think he's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I don't agree with everything. I don't agree with everything he says.
Right.
But he has some insights.
He has some insights.
Yeah.
And he.
I mean, clearly not disagreeable enough for me to not listen to him all the time. I listen to him all the time. Plus, he's NYU. Nice.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's very prolific, by the way.
I'm very happy to hear that you said that. You know,
it's crazy.
I should tell Scott. Patrick says,
do you know him?
You're prolific. No, I don't.
But he talks a lot about that, the idea that we tell young people, follow your passion. And for most people, myself included, that wasn't very practical.
Yeah.
From, you know, and like, you know, for instance, like when I got to college, like the most coolest passion, like true follow my passion would be to like play in a rock band.
Yeah. Oh, okay. We're going to make that happen for you.
Right. But like, that's not pragmatic, you know, like that's,
except for when I invite you on stage and, you know.
No, but I mean like full time. I mean like move to New York and like, you know, start a band.
Okay. Still possible.
Or like move to New York and like, you know, work in a record store and like start a band, you know, like,
yeah.
That is just like, you can only do that if you're like young and like don't care about, or you just have like a lot of money. And so his whole point is that, that's a little bit of it's a little bit misleading. Instead, you should, you can get passionate about anything. You can get passionate about, you can pretty much any field you can imagine has, the more you do it, the better you get at it, the more passionate you will be at that thing. So he kind of turns that idea on its head. I tend to agree with that. Especially because most people, especially like young people, they don't really know what they're passionate about, and then B, the thing that they're passionate about is not something you can actually like make a living from. Yeah.
And so but that's also kind of what I mean by strategy. One, I think it's risky, you know, because early on, you know, I do think it's risky if you don't truly know what you want.
Yeah.
To maybe go towards a direction that you may think is a passion. And so I think it is always, you know, a strategic, I'm just saying from like a risk reward standpoint, it's a strategic decision to maybe do something that is a little bit more like, will give you some resume or whatever you're doing or experience in something that will make you useful and valuable in some way. Just like in product strategy, you don't know exactly what the vision is. Mm-hmm. You have a directional sense of that vision, and that vision is directional based on, the things that you care most about, your mission, what you believe in.
Mm-hmm.
But like, early on, you might not want to put all your eggs in the basket of rock band. As you're saying, on top of that, it's like it could be a very narrow vision, and like that vision could actually be fueled by sort of a broader energy, something
Mm-hmm.
that gets you excited. There is some, like entertaining others, like tapping into something that gives you flow. There's a lot of just common philosophies and approaches around there, around like, finding things that make you valuable, but things that you're excited to do.
Mm-hmm.
The more you kind of like try different things and move in that direction, one might find that the vision that you had, it's the same, almost like drivers, but just it manifested itself in different ways.
Yeah.
I think if you have a very, very, very strong conviction, it's like picking a stock. If you have a really strong conviction about something, like, I think it's not most people. There are a few people in the world who like know exactly what they were meant to do in the world, and they just go do it. And that's like, I think it's like they should just go do it. But I think like I'm maybe similar to you. I mean, I kind of was like, I need to build my strategic moat first,
Mm-hmm.
figure out where my skills are, so that I can put myself in a creative space without pressure. Because what I didn't want to do, and there's trade-offs here, what I didn't want to do was put myself in a situation where creativity and the passion that I had became a job. Like, I wasn't doing it because I wanted to. I was doing it because I needed to get a paycheck.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to put myself in a position where I never had to ask for that. And that I could just create that world for myself.
Very smart.
But yeah, I think it's like it's about building early on. It's about building the leverage to make choices. And actually, what's his name? The guy from YC, not Sam Altman. The
Paul. Yeah.
Paul's, what is his last name?
Paul Giamatti. I'm just kidding. Pauly G. I don't know.
Oh my god, we're gonna have to. Can somebody search up his name? Anyway,
Paul Altman.
No. Funny. Okay. Anyways, Paul. We'll leave it at that. Paul had a really good essay on this, where he said, and this goes back to the American point that you made earlier. He said, what I tell people early on in the career is you need to go broad, because you don't know yet. And so, because he, I think he was like talking to a couple folks when they were starting startups like early on in college, and he was like, this is the time for you to explore. You don't want to get locked into anything. You like want to take this opportunity to, just like product, you get a bunch of ideas, you like conceptually kind of narrow it down to a couple of groups, you kind of move in those directions, and then if you feel like you landed on gold somewhere, then you zone in, you zone in, you zone in. But
yeah.
Oh, sorry. Welcome to my soliloquy.
So I have one more question.
Okay, enough talking for me.
Yeah. No, but I was gonna say
my model.
Something you brought up that I forgot. What was it?
While you do that, I'm gonna search up Paul's last name, because it's gonna drive me.
Paul PG. No, his last name Paul Graham.
Paul Graham.
Yeah.
It was PG.
Like going broad, like yeah. I think there is a lot of I definitely did that. Mm-hmm. I think sometimes I realize, if I would have been more focused, I maybe would have gotten here faster or there faster. So I think there are trade-offs, obviously. But I think it comes down to the individual. If you really know you want to be like a some sort of doctor in college, awesome. One of my best friends, he's a very accomplished artist.
Yeah.
And he was into them like in high school. We were like very close friends from high school. And it was pretty clear from high school, like he was just constantly doing very eccentric stuff. He was making really interesting. He was like had the most eccentric hobbies, and just kind of it was kind of obvious like, oh, he was gonna keep doing that and see
Yeah.
where it takes him. So I do think there are examples of people kind of know,
Yeah.
early on. In my case, I didn't, and yeah, definitely explored, went broad, and I think the same approach that I have to music in a lot of ways, being very open minded,
Mm.
Constantly challenging myself especially in the music sense, find new sounds. If you want to reduce it down like that, that also propelled me outside of music. And like for me, like going to Japan, and then coming back and living in New York, and I got obsessed with photography in Japan, and kept doing that in New York. And I was
Is
like,
that kind of why you ended up
with the film,
doing some of the photography stuff at Google?
no, well, a little
Yeah.
bit, but it also before that, it like these things happen. Like one thing leads to the next. I was doing a lot of portrait photography, and I happened to meet these two artists who live in Brooklyn, Dumbo,
Yeah.
and they had like an open studio. And I was like, I came by and I was like, oh my, it's like such a beautiful art studio, and they were visually extremely unique characters.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked them if I could take photos of them, do a portrait project of them.
Yeah.
And they were totally down. I did it. And next thing you know, 5 years later, that becomes a feature-length documentary that
Oh, that's what
that
sparked the documentary.
that like went to Sundance and then went to the Oscars in 2014.
Wow.
So it started with just meeting these people.
Wait, so you did a documentary on the
Yeah.
people that you met?
Yeah. But for me, I always say that was my first startup, because it was it felt the same way as starting a company. You have a crazy vision
Yeah.
that is like honestly like 5% likelihood,
Yeah.
but you still believe. You have to believe it, but like most
Right.
things are like, oh my god.
It's like the paradox. You have to like believe
Right.
it, and you're also like, this may not work, but I believe it.
Right. And you have to stick with it.
Yeah.
And you think it'll take a year.
Mm-hmm.
It takes 2 years. You think it'll take 2 years. It takes 3, and all of a sudden it's 5 years.
Yeah.
And
How long did the documentary take you?
it took almost 5 years,
Wow.
because the first 2 or 3 we were just it was like a weekend project. We would go on the weekends, we would shoot some footage, just kind of like this, not like this much lighting, just like me and my best friend who's the director, and we would just keep, and over the time we like got better and better and better and better, and eventually we're like, oh, like we have enough to make a movie.
Yeah.
Awesome. I wonder if people would watch this. Yeah. And then like that honestly, it was a mixture of like hard work, but also a lot of luck.
So why don't we talk a little bit about the documentary?
Yeah.
What was it about, and what was it? I know the initial inspiration, but tell us more about it, or tell me.
It's actually very topical
Yeah.
to our broader sort of conversation. The movie is called Cutie and the Boxer.
Okay.
It is a 92-minute documentary about a married couple who are both artists, older Japanese couple. Also the Japanese connection. I happened to meet them and like know a little bit of Japanese, so I could like talk to them. And they're now both, he's in his 90s, she's in her 70s, but they were like in their 80s and 60s like 10 years ago or so. And it's really a story about these two artists who have lived in New York for 40 plus years and never quite broken through. And
Gotcha.
it's a meditation on what that looks like, that true, like give your life up to being an artist, what that looks like, and through the story of like a married couple, the challenges they've gone through, and so it's really kind of a love story.
Yeah.
But even that took us a long time to get to that point. It started off as a more of a typical art documentary. Oh, here's a cool artist. Here's some interviews with people who you might know of, because this is like an unknown artist.
Yeah.
But people really resonated with the humanistic side of it, and it was also shot very like every single frame we wanted to feel like it was like a perfectly constructed, even though it was a documentary movie.
Yeah.
So
was there like a particular moment that you feel like you remember from the film that like kind of like stands out to you and like made you think, oh, you know what, actually this is deeper than maybe I first expected?
there is one moment I don't want to give it away, but there is a moment in the film that it basically is like kind of what you're describing, where, and it's very similar. It's almost the same exact conversation about what it takes to truly live, give your life to the creative process fully. What that looks like, it is very intense.
Wow.
And these people embody what that looks like, and you can kind of see how it challenges you in ways that are pretty intense.
Yeah.
So
And so so you actually got it to Sundance. That's pretty big.
Sundance was I'd say the first big break.
Yeah.
Because it literally was a project that just two of us were doing for 3 years in the week. We both had full-time jobs. Weekends we would go over for most of Saturday, sometimes most of Sunday as well, and would just shoot a bunch of footage. And over the course of many years, we had enough to make a film, and some people saw it and they're like, oh, there's something here.
Yeah.
Something here. And yeah, I went to Sundance, and then at Sundance, we're going to Sundance. We thought, well, no one knows who we are. We have no credibility in this place. We don't have like a movie people know about.
Right.
Best case scenario, we'll have a good time with our friends, and then maybe we'll meet a couple people.
Yeah.
And the very first screening at Sundance, it was like electric. People were like, did you see Cutie the Boxer? They're like, oh my God, like that film is crazy. And we're like,
wow,
this is crazy.
So you can just actually submit to Sundance?
No. You have to
go through like
it's it's basically like Y Combinator. It's the same. It's as competitive.
Gotcha.
And then at Sundance, because of all the buzz, it got acquired, and by the company formerly known as the Weinstein Company.
Oh, wait. So it's out? People can see it?
Yeah.
Where can they see it?
I think these days it's on, I don't think it's on Netflix anymore. Probably just.
Oh, it used to be on Netflix?
It was on Netflix, yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. Netflix director here that we've invited.
It's probably on only you probably can only purchase it at this point. Yeah.
Okay. Premium. Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
Okay. So did you ever consider that maybe you wanted to direct films after that?
It's interesting because it comes back to what we were talking about earlier, this mix of pragmatic versus passion, or practical intuition, however you want to describe it. For me, I kind of wrestled with it a lot. Like, it was never my full-time job. It was like a weekend project. I always thought of it as like a hobby.
Yeah. And you had some spark of success. So it seemed like there may be some signals.
Right.
Yeah.
But what I couldn't quite wrap my head around is I just couldn't imagine myself doing that as a career, because maybe as a simplistic way of thinking about it, I couldn't just imagine myself as a full-time creative.
Yeah.
I always had this mixture of like right brain, left brain, and going full into, I don't know which one is which, but going full into the creative one, I'd be like,
just tell us.
Yeah. Right brain. Yeah. I was like, I can't I would love to do that, but I can't see it.
Yeah.
I need to have like a more pragmatic sort of
Yeah. I mean,
core job.
I feel the same way. I mean, I think sometimes people ask me like, would you ever, is this like, are you going to quit and become an artist, singer, and like, I'm like, yeah, maybe if I'm I've got like a couple businesses, like maybe if I'm Rihanna.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember you talking about this exact thing a couple years ago when we were talking about how you kind of need to use the business pragmatic brain
Yeah.
during the week, and then use the
Well,
creative one.
I mean, I'd love to get in, to be able to really kind of, I try to do both every day. It's definitely hard though.
It's hard. I mean, I like to the simple things. Like I try to do a little bit of writing
Okay.
in the morning.
Are you okay? I was gonna say, are you a morning or evening?
Morning.
Writer?
Yeah. My IQ just like
So you shifted over to doing something a little bit more pragmatic after the directing in the documentary. So maybe in like sort of a high level, like kind of how did your product journey start/evolve over the years?
Yeah. So it's actually in business school when the movie
Gotcha.
went to Sundance and Oscars. It was actually in the business school. But even before then, I decided to go to business school.
Yeah.
I didn't have any sort of true background in business. At this point, I was working at a startup in New York.
Okay.
Like a B2B, a very small company.
Gotcha.
And because I knew I wanted to get out of journalism, and I was like, well, crap, I know nothing about this stuff. Like, I had like a biz dev type of role.
Business school is really good for transitions.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I should. I mean, yeah, I don't really have a network. I don't really have like hard skills. Like, could use some little help here.
Yeah.
So I went to business school and at UPenn and Wharton, and so I was still really close to New York, and even before then, the whole reason or the whole like sort of plan for me was like, I really want to do something where you can combine like the creating new things with like more of but also have like a foot in the business strategy world. Like, what does that role look like? And it was pretty obvious. It was like something in product.
Yeah.
And
there was similar calculation.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Because it is. You get to use. You get to spend a couple hours looking at different designs, and like it's a visual aesthetic piece, and then you have to look at numbers, and I'm very analytical, and then you have to like think about the big picture, and I honestly I love it. I love mixing those disciplines. I love having the in the weeds conversations with the designer, and then the data scientist, and the engineer, and I wouldn't want to do any one of those. And this is actually why, to your point, like the product role is very suited for someone like me, because you do get to kind of think holistically about things.
Actually, one thing I just thought of as you were saying that is in many ways I actually think a creative, like a true creative is very similar to a product person in a way, because you're somebody who sees something that you want to bring to life, and then it's like, okay, what are the mediums, what are the people that I need to like work together with to sort of like bring this like vision to life? You can actually see it coming to life. And so I think that's like, and now obviously like in some cases, like if you're an artist, you can just do it yourself, but like it's kind of like a nice way to do sort of collaborative creative visioning, like a production.
Yeah Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's like, it is, most people who don't work in the tech world don't really understand what the role is.
Yeah. Well, especially because I work in an e-commerce company, so they doubly don't know what product.
Right.
I mean, not them, but like people, when I talk to them, sometimes it's very confusing.
Right. Because there's not really a good analog.
Yeah.
In other parts of, maybe you would call like a
general manager. or
or
producer?
GM or producer or but um but yeah, in my experience, the best product people can navigate. Most
Yeah.
people come in through one of the, they come in as a former engineer, former data scientist,
Yeah.
business person, um, and so they spike in one of those areas.
Mm-hmm.
But the ones who can, um, in my experience, the ones who can like really like navigate. For me, early on, I had like very little technical ability, and I still don't. I don't have an engineering background.
Yeah. Where were you during this time? Are you in New York doing these roles, or?
So post business school, I moved to San Francisco,
Okay.
and then I moved to
Oh, non-technical product manager in San Francisco. How was that life?
well, actually, honestly, I don't know if it was semi. So actually, it was at Amazon,
Okay.
and
So you
so
went to San Francisco and then you worked for Amazon.
it was an Amazon office in San Francisco.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, they
Gotcha.
have like several offices.
Yeah, makes sense.
They have one in, yeah, now they probably have more. It's
Yeah.
a giant company. But it was when I was there that I randomly got a job at Snapchat.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I wasn't like planning to move to Los Angeles, but we also
Yeah.
were, my wife is from here. And so like, oh, this is, how many tech companies are in Los Angeles? Like not that many, right?
Yeah.
This could be worth a chance. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
And so how did you like coming to Silicon Beach?
Yeah. No, honestly, it's changed a lot.
Yeah.
It's interesting how obviously COVID changed a lot of things in terms of people who are here.
Mm-hmm.
You've been here for longer than I have.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't even know how long I've been.
yeah.
9 years.
It's yeah, I really love it here. I think LA is a tough place to visit, but a great place to live.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Who is the opposite of that?
New York.
Tough, good place to visit, tough place to live.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Interesting.
You don't agree?
Oh no, I just, it's a lot to process.
New York, you go for a weekend, you like have a
Yeah.
blast, and then you're
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
okay, I'm ready to go home.
I don't know. Frankly, I lived in New York for 6 years and I've lived here for over 10 years. So I'm just a very good living in places person.
Yeah.
Um, okay. So was there a favorite out of those three
Cities?
companies?
Wait, Snap, Amazon, and
Google or Discord, actually.
all very different. Very like it's crazy how different they are. I would say, early Snap was really fun.
Yeah,
Lot-
you like kind of like 0 to 1. You like building.
Yeah, but also it was we definitely were not 0 to 1 when I joined.
Okay.
Yeah, I wasn't that early.
Okay. How many people?
It was like 300.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but then it like exploded to like 3,000.
Gotcha.
That
That must be crazy.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
But being part of, it's funny. I was just talking last night about this with somebody else. When you are part of a hyper growth story, especially as a founder, which is obviously very rare, but even as an employee, it is the most amazing feeling. It's an addiction.
Yeah.
Just the idea that like there's so much adrenaline.
Yeah.
That's kind of what Snap felt like early then. It didn't last that long.
Yeah.
Because, various things happen in the market.
Yeah.
But that was definitely the most exciting. And I think for me, I've worked at scale. I've worked at, Amazon, Google. I don't know if you call Snaps or Discord scale. They're kind of like growth stage, maybe is what you want to call them.
Yeah.
And I've also been a founder.
Yeah.
And like done basically the other end of the spectrum, like true 0 to 1. And I think what I've learned is I enjoy certain parts of both those ends, but I actually kind of like the middle. I kind of like, which is where I am now, like a Series B or C company that is small enough so that there's not a lot of process. Because as a company grows, like it's a lot of process. I'm not like I just don't.
Yeah.
I don't like bureaucracy,
Me neither.
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. It took me like 3 or 4 big companies to be like, I don't really like bureaucracy. Like,
Yeah.
you know, like, but
Do you
actually,
feel like it went straight? Was it like big, small, small, big, big? Or
no,
was it like,
it was small. It was like giant, well, big Amazon. And then like Snap at that time was a kind of a random outlier bet. Like most people
yeah,
thought Snap was just for
yeah. It was like small rocket ship.
sending like, yeah. But
Yeah.
this was honestly, especially given the fact that it was like in LA, like most people in San Francisco were like,
Yeah.
why would you like, isn't Snap like a sexting app? Like, um, so it was kind of a gamble in a way.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, and then I was like,
Then you went to Google.
oh yeah, but after like almost 3 years at Snap, I was like, it's like
Yeah, yours is kind of like this.
it's a roller
Because
coaster.
you did your startup after that.
Yeah.
So you went.
In a way, it was almost like oscillating between like,
Yeah.
I really want to get back to being more focused on building and moving faster, and then like after doing that for a couple of years, like I,
Yeah.
the benefits of like working at scale,
Yeah.
but I think it was helpful for me to experience
Yeah.
the different contexts and how
Yeah.
also how the product role evolves,
Right.
because the bigger company, the more removed the
Yeah.
PMs usually get from, and the more time is spent sort of debating what to do versus actually doing. I like doing.
Do you have a favorite feature that you've launched?
Um,
I
let's
know
see.
that these were your prep questions.
Yeah, no, it's all good.
I'm just throwing them on the spot now.
I worked on, when I was actually at Snap, I worked on a lot of interesting creator initiatives
Okay.
that in the 6 years since then have become like the whole creator economy has become massive. It was big then, and it's just exploded. So that was very interesting because it was, I think anything with a marketplace dynamic where you have like a supply and demand side, there's like a business
Yeah.
model included, and there's a revenue strategy. Those are always really interesting.
Yeah.
It's tricky. You have
Those are my favorite.
yeah, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was really fun. I think, and even like as a founder, like building something from scratch and seeing people use it more and more every day, being able to change, like,
Wait, duh. Okay, obviously the answer to this question is your favorite product is Commons, the
Yeah.
product that you created.
yeah,
So actually, like, I gave like a little brief overview, but
Yeah.
maybe like what inspired
yeah.
Commons and
Yeah.
like what did you build?
Rewind the clock back to early 2020.
Okay, we're in 2020 now, guys.
Yeah.
Okay.
And let's see. I had recently left Google, and I was looking to start something and talking to a bunch of different companies and doing like a lot of co-founder sort of exploration.
Yeah. And you quit before you knew you wanted to do exactly what you wanted to do. You kind of was like,
Yeah.
I'm good. I'm out.
Yeah, basically. Because it wasn't like it was pretty clear to me like Google's an amazing company. The people there are absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
But it was pretty obvious within even the first year. It's like this was I joined the LA office. There's not a lot of teams here. The team that I joined for, the big sort of new initiative I joined for, basically got like canceled. Everyone kind of like distributed to like different teams, and there were lots of awesome teams and new roles to join, but they're all in the Bay Area. And I was like, I'm in Los Angeles. I can't really move. And like teams that are based in Los Angeles were like not very exciting.
Yeah.
So anyway, I was like, well, this was interesting, but like I'm not going to move to the Bay Area.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I COVID starts to happen, and by that point I was like I was just doing a bunch of exploration, talking to a bunch of different people. And
so you felt like you could find something if you needed to, so you weren't concerned about kind of the period where maybe you weren't, a full-time role.
yeah, like I think at this point I had a bunch of I was I had a lot of friends who were starting stuff,
Ah, I see.
and they were like, dude, you have like you should go, like you have all these like ideas, like why don't you try it? Like as you get older and like life gets more complicated,
Yeah.
it's really hard. I knew that I would probably want to start a family at some point, and so like if I ever wanted to start a company, at least attempt to starting a company,
Mm.
it was like kind of like a now or never kind of thing.
Yeah.
That was part of
Yeah.
the equation as well. So anyway, COVID happens, and one of the ideas even before COVID happened that I had been thinking about was the idea that we have all these communication tools for consumers, and all these texting apps and in the enterprise like B2B world, you have Slack and that's it. Like all like Zoom is not really like a great product. And so the idea at a high level is like, can you take
Gonna go viral. No, it's kidding. Okay. Patrick Bird says Zoom is not a great product.
if you could take the same
We'll cut that out, Tori.
if you I think most people agree because Zoom is not a great
No,
product.
I'm a huge Zoomer.
Everyone's a huge Zoomer, but like do you like
Way more than Google Meet. Actually, I
well
love Zoom.
but do you like Zoom the product? Or do you like Zoom the reliability of the product?
I've had no issues with Zoom. I didn't
Interesting.
even know people could have an opinion on Zoom or an opinion on, I mean, it just
Well,
seems like a utility for the most part.
It's so interesting because I I have like a visceral reaction almost every time I use Zoom.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because
Well,
like the fact that there's so many buttons everywhere and nothing is quite where you think it should
God,
be.
well, they do great face filters, so.
They again like it's not a it's not like a product company, it's an infrastructure company. Um, so anyway, the thesis was, can
Yeah.
we take consumer communication, like that ethos, can we bring that to
Yeah,
the B2B world? And then COVID happened.
right.
And all of a sudden everyone was working remotely. I was like, oh my God,
Yeah.
this idea became like 1,000 times more relevant.
Yeah. And there definitely could be more. Like, I don't want to, like, putting my, like, thoughts about Zoom aside. Like,
Yeah.
like, there's still an opportunity, clearly,
Right.
regardless.
So having done this, I don't think there is. Opportunity for what, you mean?
Oh, for what the problem you were solving.
Well, I think so. Having tried to solve the problem, now I realize that it's very hard.
Oh, it's actually okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, but so anyway,
Threw you a softball and then you're like, just kidding. There's no ball there.
yeah, I guess it's a story. But you're right. Well, that was the thesis. That was like what. So all these investors I was talking to, as soon as COVID happened, it was like they were like, oh, you're building something in like remote communication tools. My two co-founders, one of them I used to work with at Snapchat, both technical, and we raised some money. We built several products, it started as like a 3D sort of environment, like a game-like environment, where you could sort of, because again, rewind the clock, everyone's at home in COVID.
These all seem promising.
Right?
Yeah.
There are several companies that are still trying different flavors of this.
Right.
This whole experience, if anything, the two big takeaways for me from starting a company were, one is how I think about velocity and shipping cadence, and like how important it is. Like speed is everything. It is the most important thing. And I just never had to think about things like that. And be like, so it's fundamentally changed the way I think about that.
Yeah.
The other thing was how I think about markets and how I think about every company that makes it to, I don't know, $50 million a year in ARR is a miracle. The amount of things that can go wrong, the amount of things that can go wrong, there's so much luck and timing involved.
Yeah.
You could have an amazing idea, best team in the world, but if you're like 6 months too early or too
Yeah.
late, that's everything.
Well,
So
so what was the actual, like, where did the product land? It was like
it was essentially like it was a imagine, remember Clubhouse?
Mhm.
Yeah. Imagine Clubhouse for your company.
Hmm.
So your own company, and even you started with like your own team,
Yeah.
had its own like sort of always on audio conversation, if you will,
Mm.
that we were trying to replicate what it felt like to be in the same room
Oh.
as your colleagues, because people, again, they were working in their same room. They went they everyone was like working in place for over a year in some cases.
Yeah.
How can we bring back the idea, the feeling that you're in the same room? And there's a ton of research about how much more um, cross pollination, how much more productivity happens when you can be, next to your colleague.
Hmm.
And so that was a thesis. And so the product was basically a
So like you could like tap into a room and like kind
yeah
of hear the conversation that
yeah.
was happening.
It started as like a more of a 3D orientation where you could kind of like walk into, you had a little avatar, you like walk into this area.
That's so cool.
It's fun. It's
Yeah.
very fun, and there's a very high novelty factor
Yeah.
that people really
Yeah.
were attracted to. But what we found, that was our first product. What we
Yeah.
found is that the novelty factor wore off immediately.
I see.
Like, oh, it's awesome. And like, what am I going to do this? Like,
Yeah.
what am I going to use this for?
Yeah.
And so we kind of like over like 2 or 3 different versions, we streamlined it,
Yeah.
and it became more like almost like a Slack type interface where
Right.
you have like a grid layout, and you can just like go into different rooms.
Gotcha. So you got investment. And then where did you eventually go with the
Yeah.
company?
So we raised a round of funding, and built several products.
Mm-hmm.
We had a team of about like 10 or 12 people,
Yeah.
and this is like 2.5 years in, more or less.
Mm.
I was raising for the next round, and the market. This is like when the market started to, like the COVID bubble started to shift. People started going back to work. A lot of our core market was, there was always this the big risk for us was, if the remote work thing is not a thing, then our market evaporates.
Yeah.
And so it was like we were kind of fighting against the clock to establish ourselves before that happens.
Right.
So anyway,
there's only kind of like this like small window where it's like, hey, like try something new, do something different.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's what we were racing against. And at some point, as I was fundraising, I started getting approached by other companies. One of them, the one that eventually acquired us, was not a competitor, but kind of like an adjacent competitor.
Yeah.
And
But being acquired and getting investment, both of those things are like, a lot of people don't even get to that point. So
yeah, we got lucky. And honestly, I think there's two modes or two philosophies with, in this case, like company building. One is, and it's so interesting because it's kind of like reflects back to what we were talking about earlier. One is, I am so obsessed with this problem, I will not quit until I solve it.
Yeah.
Even if it takes me 20 years and I have to sleep on the couch.
Yes.
The other mode is,
That one. Just kidding.
the other mode is,
know that he's on the podcast with us. Sorry.
the other mode is, I want to find out as quickly as possible if this is trending towards 0 or trending towards 100.
Yeah. That's fair.
And I was in the latter camp.
Gotcha.
So it was, I knew that I knew that this was like my first venture-backed startup. This is the one that I will probably make all the mistakes. And so anyway, that was my overall.
Yeah. Your intention was, find a problem that you felt that you could solve, and then sort of see, kind of take this as a sort of a learning process.
And like, if I could see that it was kind of, and my after a couple of years of looking at this market and building this market, I could kind of not quite see the writing on the wall, but I could kind of see that I was became pretty bearish.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I don't know if it's like
I mean, I think, there is, I actually, hearing you say that maybe a couple times, I actually feel like one thing that you seem very like attuned to is like when you should jump ship,
yeah
or like when you want to make a shift. Like you're kind of like, oh, okay, like I don't know, about journalism. I tried it. I'm going to do something else.
yeah
And I think that's actually something that like I think is a natural skill that maybe not everyone. It's a sort of intuition.
yeah, but that's I would argue that there is a balance to be had.
Yeah.
I feel like I was pretty impatient,
Mm.
especially early. Um, I I think that also times have like the market has changed so much. Like
Yeah.
you used to be rewarded for constantly like changing, upgrading jobs, whatever. Now it's a very different industry, a very different mindset.
Interesting.
I think maybe it's still the same in some cases,
Yeah.
but I
I'm
think
curious, like where the signals you're. What are your what?
well, I just think
Yeah.
that during the 2011 to 2021 bull market, every company was just
Oh yeah.
swallowing talent as quickly as possible
Right.
and willing to like just
Yeah.
offer most
And
insane.
I think it's just the risk averse mode. Like when you're a little bit in more of a cautionary market,
Right.
you're going to lean on people who are, maybe more loyal or more,
Right.
like.
Yeah. But that is the but I do think there's a balance there. I've tended to and I think like one thing I've learned is there are times when you feel maybe you feel like a good example is actually going back to making the film. I think it was like year 3 of making this movie that I was like, you know, I'm kind of tired of spending my entire weekend like holding a camera for 7 hours.
You're like, my shoulder hurts.
My shoulder hurts. Like,
I don't
and
know.
I'm like in my early 20s in New York. I kind of want to be like hanging out with my friends.
Yeah.
And there were several times where I was like, I think I'm done with this thing. But then, like between me and the director, my friend Zach, the two of us, mostly him, also me sometimes, be like, yeah, but if we could do like that one more shot, we might. It's like it's always like keep going a little bit more. So I'll be completely honest. There's several times I was like ready to throw in the towel.
Yeah.
And I think for me, it was a good realization that sometimes you got to stick in it. You got to stick with it, even if it seems. And knowing when to do that, I think, is very hard.
It's very hard. I agree. And I actually think most of the time you're like the right time is actually the moment where it almost feels like it's gone just a little bit past, like almost like when you're sometimes when you're pricing things, like, they say that when you're optimizing pricing, that price is actually the part where you're just a little like kind of uncomfortable, but you're like, I'm still going to pay this price, and even with like pushing yourself on any sort of challenge, it's kind of like there's several like moments where you're like, okay, like I'm not going any further, and like when to know it's like a time to stop versus when to know, hey, this is just another like thing I just need to push through, is a very difficult reflection. Where's your head at now when it comes to like, how you're thinking about your current stage in your career? And then also, if you were to kind of like reflect on the path so far, do you feel like even though you might not have kind of known the direction or the path as you were going along, but do you feel like looking back, some of it makes a little bit more sense in terms of like the themes or how you got to where you are now? So kind of like a reflection and a today going forward.
The cliche quote is like the Steve Jobs quote. You can't.
Or the classic quote.
Which quote?
Never. Well, I'm just saying classic instead of cliche.
The classic
timeless.
Quote, the classic timeless quote. You can never make sense of things in the moment, but in hindsight, it kind of. I think
you connect the dots going backwards.
That's the one. Yeah. So I think that definitely it's sometimes like, this makes no sense. I'm like, well, no, it makes a lot of sense. I was like, kind of have to squint. But
Everything. You just got to squint.
right,
That's actually my philosophy about
really,
everything. Yeah.
yeah, I
Because you
like
got
that.
to see the macro curve. You need to squint. You can't. Yeah.
Interesting, interesting. I like that. Yeah. Um, so, but yeah, like where I in it's interesting because I feel like I'm very much a late bloomer in a lot of ways. I've always have been since I was a kid.
Mm.
I wasn't particularly athletic as a young child, but then I think at one point I got cut from the basketball team when I was like in seventh grade, and I was so embarrassed and so angry, and I was like, this is never gonna happen again. And I like the next year was like MVP of the basketball team,
Yeah.
and then like became like
Wow.
very like an MVP, a captain of the football team, and so I kind of had this like pattern of like um kind of not failing, but like kind of like trying stuff and then seeing what works.
Yeah.
And
Or failure as fuel in some ways.
in some ways, I'm like, this is interesting, but I'm sure it worked, you know. And like,
Yeah.
it's definitely a process. But I'm trying to figure out what the question was, or where I was
Just
going
kind
with
of
that.
like where you're at now.
Oh yeah,
And then if
oh
you
yeah,
were to
yeah,
reflect
oh
on
yeah. So
things going on.
yeah, so like the whole late bloomer thing. Like, I think I am. I could easily do this for 30 years.
Do you feel like that's essentially like when you think about your career, you kind of think about you kind of like feel like you tried a bunch of different things
Yeah,
and at different sizes and you kind of like oscillated as you mentioned between sort of like the passion part of it with the
yeah,
sort of pragmatic like and then you kind of went through the starting your own company and kind of seeing the challenges behind that and so it in some ways you kind of like have landed in this sort of like sweet spot of like you can be hands on, you can build something, you can
yeah,
like but you're and it's something that already has product market fit, so like you're
yeah,
not like pace running against the clock. Um, uh, it seems like that's kind of what you're sort of like referring to in terms of a backwards theme.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, the late bloomer thing for me is just I just think that I'm just like that's always
Yeah.
I've always been that way.
Yeah.
And it's fun. I always thought it was
Yeah.
a bad thing. Like, oh, like you don't know what you want to do, or like,
Yeah.
oh, like you were like way more awkward in your teenage years and like later than most people, you know.
But
A lot of guys are.
at the end of the day, that's usually the person who in the movies ends up ruling the world. So I think you're good.
Really? Which movie is this?
With the ones who are not like the most like the most popular person. I'm not saying you weren't popular. I'm sure you were very popular, but I'm saying
I went
like
to
the
an all I went to
schools.
I went to like an all boys Catholic school. So
Okay.
like and
And you were star of the class, star of the football team. Um,
yeah,
okay, I want to talk a little bit about creativity because we
yeah.
spent a lot of time on
Let's do it.
work, and then I'm gonna finish with a few like rapid fire questions
Let's
at
do
the
it.
very end. But we'll kind of get your juices going with the creativity. I think, where are you right now in your sort of like relationship with creativity and like how it fits into your life? Because obviously creativity can appear in all different places, but what's interesting is that like I think a lot of your earlier career you were kind of like very like consumer centric even with documentaries, and now you're kind of like in a B2B space. um and so I'm actually just curious, like how do you feel like you balance creativity in your life today, and like what is the role that it plays?
Yeah. I think even this is obviously mostly outside of work,
Yeah.
but even within the work context,
Mhm.
I feel that there's a good amount of creative juice flowing.
Mm.
And I think these things complement each other.
Yeah.
The more inspired, energized you are at work, the more you're going to be outside of work,
Mm.
which is
Agree.
kind of paradoxical, right?
Yeah.
You would think like, oh, when I'm burned out at work, I'm going to be like, I'm going to need the
Yeah.
weekend music sessions.
Yeah.
But I find it goes in the other way.
Yeah.
And so,
Energy is energy.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so,
Keep that as the tagline.
Energy's energy, honestly.
Kidding. Yeah.
Um, yeah, we could get really woo
We can get really
if you want.
Don't
We haven't even like
does.
we haven't talked about somatic therapy and yeah.
Too.
But yeah. So where was I going with that?
You were
Energy.
saying, yeah, because you're feeling good at work and it's kind of
Oh,
synergistic.
creativity.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting because I think about um output. Like and I don't ever live up to it, honestly, but I always think, can I m- commit to writing something once a week, making a song once a week?
Yeah, I was gonna say, is the writing like your creative writing, is it like journaling or is it music or is it poetry or like what do you mean when you say writing?
When I say writing, it is predominantly writing about ideas
Mm.
that are sort of mostly business oriented.
Okay.
But for me, it's still, I just like the process of synthesizing different
Yeah.
concepts.
Yeah.
And
Oh, and you actually write, as a medium. I just realized I remember you have a Substack, you
I'm not very
post
consistent
on
with
LinkedIn.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I always try to be, and I'm not.
Yeah.
I try to
You're a
do post a
very
week.
writer. I've read some of your
Really?
articles.
This,
One on design. Actually, when I was in Japan, I think I like.
oh, there
Yeah.
you go. I need to do more of it. But I try to do something, some sort of either that or a song.
Yeah.
Even like the other day, I had like 2 hours on a Saturday,
Yeah.
and I just threw together a couple of samples and made like a
Yeah.
as like a not quite a song, but just like a couple of
Yeah.
like nice loops.
Yeah.
And for me, it's kind of I said output, but the output is actually more of a way to measure and like create a habit around it. What is actually valuable from it is not the output, because ultimately the output doesn't matter for me,
Yeah.
honestly. The output is like a way to create a habit of it.
Yeah.
For me, it's actually about the headspace, because the
Yeah.
creative headspace
Yeah.
is just like
It's grounding.
it's grounding.
Yeah.
You can access it via, psychedelics or
Yeah.
meditation, or I
Yeah.
also do a lot of like really intense exercise.
Yes, exactly. I feel like I get the best creative ideas when I'm at the gym or walking or just whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so yeah, for me it's like almost like getting your brain into that
Right.
space
Yeah.
for a few hours a week.
Yeah. And it's actually almost like it's also a good exercise to your point. Like when you're back at work, your brain is kind of more energized. It's more vibrant. Like,
Right.
You've been giving it that almost nourishment
Right.
of energy.
Right.
Okay, last question on creativity, which is, do you have any things that you're kind of inspired by right now, or like favorite artists or favorite whatever creative medium, take your pick.
Lots of favorite artists right now. Uh I think, I mean, it's almost like too many to mention. If I did choose like one of my favorite artists right now, it'd be Rosalia.
Oh,
who's
yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. So that was one actually I just remembered, like,
yeah.
because you like,
I just love everything she does. But I kind of like a wide range of music.
what's your favorite Rosalia song?
Honestly, probably some of her. Well, uh, she had an album called Moto Mami, and
Okay.
that whole album is just like fantastic.
Yeah.
Um,
I actually just love hearing you say that, Moto Mommy.
yeah, she had so her performance. Unfortunately, you can't see it because it's not up.
Yeah.
I didn't go to Coachella in 2023,
Uh-huh.
but her performance there was like I watched on YouTube.
But
and
it's down now?
they only were doing live broadcasts.
Oh, okay,
I don't think you
gotcha.
can see it. I've tried.
Gotcha.
It was just unbelievable. I was just so blown away.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like a ton of music. And
You are a big live show person, right?
it's interesting because I'm actually going to a live show tomorrow I'm actually going to, and I'm going to see James Blake on Tuesday.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Different style.
Yeah, I love his stuff. I actually love James Blake's more traditional like gospel piano music.
Oh, interesting.
Wow, lots of genres.
Well, it's he for me. James Blake is like gospel piano meets dubstep in a way.
Oh, I see. Okay, there's a little bit of a common sort of like a rhythmic element to the stuff that you like. What's your favorite dance move?
I don't do dance moves. I just like like I don't have any. I
The
don't.
worm.
Although I used to. I haven't done the worm in a very. I haven't done the worm in a very long time. I love dancing salsa.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, that's
Salsa.
it's very hard.
Very sophisticated.
It's not sophisticated. It's hard for people who are
Not sophisticated. I think it's kind of sophisticated.
But once you get it, it's like walking. You know,
Okay.
I'm not very good at it, but
Yes.
it's funny. I was listening to salsa earlier today,
Yeah.
and I was thinking about like that music is so that there's a story of salsa. It's
Yeah.
on its own.
Yeah. It's
It's-
moving.
But it's like also it's like it is a true collage of like 15 different cultures. Like
Yeah.
the rhythm, like the drums are from Africa and the piano is from Europe, and the clave, a lot of the instrumentation, a lot of percussion is from the Caribbean. And it literally like salsa came from all the boats, basically the ships carrying slaves from Africa to the Caribbean.
Wow.
Like
I know
all
that,
these
yeah.
things mixing, and then they landed it in the Caribbean and landed in Cuba.
Yeah.
It's just fascinating, and like all that coming, and then like the horns and and like the brass.
Do you like jazz? Like
Yeah, I grew up playing trumpet,
Oh.
so I play a lot of jazz growing up.
It's
I don't
just
know a
full
lot.
of surprises.
I don't know a lot of jazz though, honestly. Yeah, like, you can get like very deep in jazz. I always
Yeah.
jazz was one of those genres that I always wanted to like,
Yeah.
and like always wanted to like
Yeah.
say that I liked.
They need to they need to make jazz step so that you can get it back into it.
Exactly.
Question. Is my face red? Okay, good. I took a Pepsid, so
Why?
Because Asians, we get
Pepsi.
Asian
Oh,
glow.
for the
Yeah.
okay.
The pickle juice. Yes.
yeah.
So before I go to the closing questions, this isn't a question, but just because we're on the topic, are there any other secret skills that you have not shared with us?
Gardening, cooking, barbecue.
Okay.
Grew up in Texas, so I do love barbecue.
Oh.
But
Where in Texas?
Dallas.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Yeah.
I grew up in Austin.
I knew that,
Yeah.
but I forgot about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
You went to high school there.
Elementary school.
Where'd you go to high school?
Bay Area.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Skills. Oh, you just said them. Gardening. Gardening is a thing in Texas.
Actually, I wouldn't call it a skill, honestly. I'm not,
It's a hobby.
I'm not very good at it. It's not a skill. It's a way that yeah.
Yeah.
It's like something I like doing. I'm not good at it though.
Yeah.
And then do you still DJ?
Honestly, I haven't. I DJ for my daughter. She
Yeah.
she likes DJ. She likes music. She likes dancing.
You like get the whole thing set up and you're like,
I have it set up, and and she just like loves the console, like pressing all the buttons, and like
it's a very like colorful device.
she likes dancing, and like
Yeah.
it's interesting. I went to a DJ show last weekend, actually.
Yeah.
A Saturday night. I went to. Have you heard of Boiler Room? It's a big.
Yeah, I think so.
It was a pretty big like concert mini festival in downtown, and it's weird. I felt like, remember I mentioned earlier when I fell in love with electronic music
Yeah.
when I lived in Japan,
Yeah.
like over 15 years ago. I have always been chasing that same vibe of what those clubs were like.
Interesting.
I've never found it.
Maybe it's like city EDM. You know, like how Japanese music has city pop and like kind of like the city music. Well, maybe it's like city
Well,
EDM.
it's that, but it's also, I think there was a moment in time before smartphones were like ubiquitous,
Yeah.
and also like there's the crowds in different cities, especially in Tokyo. People were just dancing. They were into the music. They were not talking. when you go to a, I've never
Yeah.
seen that. Maybe in certain parts of Germany, in Berlin, you can see that.
Gotcha.
But
Well, you still have to come to one of my live shows.
I know,
We still got to make that happen.
I know.
Okay. I like skipped like 10 questions, like a ton of questions that you prepared for. Now we're going to go into the questions that you could not prepare for.
Okay.
These are going to be rapid fire questions. And you just say the first thing that comes to mind.
Great.
I will not hold it against you.
Okay.
Okay. If your life was blah, blah, blah. If your life was a movie, what genre would it be?
Genre movie. I think like a European cinema verite movie from the 60s.
The 60s.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. What's a defining factor of the 60s? Or just like that vibe?
It
Just
was,
so we can visualize it.
Yeah, it was like just like Jean-Luc Godard and like a lot of the French New Wave type of movies that were more about style than storytelling.
Yes, yes.
And more about like improvisational
I see.
cinema in a way.
Yeah, yeah.
So like
see that. I can see
yeah.
that. You're a artistic cinematic appreciator.
And like also not a lot of rules, like
Yeah.
kind of just like try stuff.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Okay. Do you play any games? Like and if so, or even as a child, and what was your favorite game and why? It could be digital, it could be analog, it could be whatever.
I actually didn't have like a Nintendo or anything growing up.
Deprived.
Honestly, my mom will not like me saying this, but yeah, all my friends had all that stuff. I did not have it.
So what did you do to entertain yourself?
I like dug holes in the backyard. Like I had literally like started fires. I was rode my bike around the block, just like got into trouble. Yeah.
So your favorite game is troublemaking.
Yeah, I kind of missed that whole video game thing.
No Pokemon cards? No.
Nothing. Like I
Tic-tac-toe? Hopscotch? Poker? Blackjack?
I got into Wordle at some point.
What?
Wordle. Remember Wordle?
Oh, Wordle.
I don't know if it's a game. I don't know if it counts.
It is a game.
Yeah.
It is a game.
I like poker. I just don't play that often. Maybe I will.
Do you gamble at all?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
So well behaved. Actually not, because you're a troublemaker. But okay, this is hard actually. I don't know why I wrote this down,
Okay.
but what's something that makes you smile when you scroll down your IG feed or any feed?
Dog stuff.
Dog stuff.
Yeah.
Do you have a dog?
Mm-hmm.
What kind of dog?
She's a pointer.
Oh.
A
It's
German.
like a small dog.
No.
Right? Big
She's like
dog.
a medium large.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's her name?
Gigi.
Named after?
That was her name.
That's so funny. My dog named Gigi.
What?
Yeah, I had a white Pomeranian.
Really?
She passed away like a year, 2 years ago. But that's hilarious. Her name is Gigi.
You never met Gigi, my dog?
I don't think so.
Wow. I
Yeah.
guess when you've been over, she's
So
probably
basically,
exciting.
we both grew up in Texas. We both went through a path in the Bay Area, and then we both had Gigi's.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna give you 5 names.
Mm-hmm.
If you could work directly under any one of these leaders,
Mm-hmm.
which one would you pick and why?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. 1, Bezos. 2, Bill Gates. 3, Elon Musk. 4, the Zuck. 5, Sam Altman.
Can I see none?
Okay, none and why?
Well, to work directly for one of them, I think it'd be like a very challenging job. I don't think any.
Okay, what would be like the
I've
least
actually-
worst?
I've been in meeting. I really respect. I've been in meetings with Bezos. I had to. We don't. At Amazon, they didn't present things. They
Yeah.
would
Write memos.
I had to write a couple memos for the Jeff meetings, and he is unbelievably sharp.
Mm.
And I was just, it was like one of those things where you can fit a lot of content into 6 single spaced pages,
Yeah. Because there were 6-page memos that he would
and
read.
like just tons of detail, and
Yeah.
this in most cases really complex information.
Yeah.
And he would like narrow into the one like word. You're like, wait, how did you come up with this
Yeah.
metric here? Like, how did he do that? Like, that's insane.
Yeah.
Anyway,
That's a fun skill.
yeah.
Yeah.
But all those that you mentioned, if you qualify it like in a certain year,
Mm.
a certain era maybe is a better word.
Yeah.
I think Bezos, like early Amazon,
Yeah.
where I think a lot of companies have really these golden phases
Right.
where if you're lucky enough to be at that company at that time, like you compound. So early Amazon would be, I mean, same thing with early Microsoft. Um, Elon's a little insane these days, and what was the other one? So, yeah, early Facebook would be amazing.
Mm.
So,
Okay. What was your AOL screen name?
U.S. Navy 13.
Were you 13
No.
years old when you created?
No, was it? No, my Yahoo was. I at some point wanted to be in the Navy.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Okay. And why 13?
Maybe it was 13.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're very smart when we're younger. We're obvious, actually. We'd always put numbers
Yeah.
as our birth dates and whatnot.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. And then what's one of your favorite AI tools that you're using now?
Do some of the music AI stuff.
Are you like Suno or like?
I play around with those.
Yeah.
Those are interesting.
Yeah.
They're good thought starters. Some like I always thought Midjourney was interesting.
Yeah.
I do think there's like so much more innovation to be done there. I think that there's going to be a lot more there. I just don't know what it quite looks like.
Yeah.
If
If you could have something, is there something that you would want?
like an AI gin something.
Yeah, or just yeah.
I always think that a lot of the near term use cases are for AI are very utilitarian in nature.
Mm-hmm.
Record this meeting, send me notes,
Yeah.
synthesize all this information for me. And that's great. And I think those are all great use cases.
Yeah.
I think the more medium long term ones are more interesting, but also kind of hard to fathom.
Right.
I would love to have a conversation with people from the past and talk to them in their voices. And
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting.
talk to Benjamin Franklin and hang out with Jimi Hendrix and play guitar with Jimi Hendrix and like
Yeah.
that would be unbelievably
Just
interesting.
write that down. We should. I'm just kidding.
And a lot of that I think is probably feasible.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I like it. Not only collaboration between cultures in a present day or in the same era, but it could actually be that, one of the next waves of collaboration could be like actually collaborating with greats of the past,
yeah,
It's actually an interesting thought because we always talk about how can we collaborate better today or in the future, but we don't necessarily ever talk about like, well, there's just such an amazing sort of, to some extent, maybe like, AI will capture a lot of that, but there is like a human element of, well, if I were to meet you, what would be the creative spark that would happen from that?
yeah. And it's also so much, in my opinion, it's so much more interesting than a lot of ideas. A lot of the AI for social type of ideas now are mostly oriented around AI friends.
Yeah.
And wouldn't it be more interesting to be friends with Benjamin Franklin, or I keep mentioning, or Steve Jobs, whoever else?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, wouldn't that be more interesting than having a random bot like to talk to? I don't think people want to talk to robots.
Yeah.
I don't think there's like.
I don't know. I think I would like an AI talking
Really?
dog.
Really?
Yeah.
Like an actual physical dog?
I'm simplistic.
Like a physical dog? Or you mean like a?
Oh, like are you talking AR?
No, I'm talking like having a conversation with
Oh.
like a text thread.
Yeah.
With,
I meant a physical dog with an AI interface.
interesting.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that. Yeah.
I guess it'll be my secret dream.
Right.
I just want to be able to talk to animals. That's really all I want to be able to do.
But how do you talk to animals without AI?
Yeah, no, with AI.
Oh,
But they'll be physical.
oh,
The
so
AI will translate however the
oh,
physical.
so you have a real dog,
Yeah.
and then you have an AI that's like, hey, this dog really loves you.
Yes, but spoken obviously from the dog's point of view because.
Right.
Yes.
Oh, that's pretty interesting. I never thought about that.
Yeah, well, I've never thought about talking to Benjamin Franklin.
Yeah, but I think your idea is that's what I mean. The ones that are more medium long term
Yeah.
are really out there,
Mhm.
and the sky's the limit. So
Yeah. Well, who knows? The future could be here now.
the future is here.
The future is here. Well, I know it's been a long day and it's Friday, and I know you probably need to get back to doing an amazing DJ show for your daughter.
She's asleep, but
Oh, she's asleep. Yes. Actually, we're too late for that. She missed her DJ show. We apologize. But I appreciate you, taking the time out of your Friday night to come by, chat with me. And, I there's a reason why I reached out to you first to come on the show because I feel like you embody a lot of the things that, I um uh want to express on this podcast, which is kind of embracing the journey as a whole, really understanding your own energy and kind of where that's taking you, being very open and honest about kind of how you want to incorporate different parts of your life and thinking through what's the best way to incorporate those different aspects of yourself, your right, your left brain, your creativity, and all of that into, your full self and your full life. And, again, there's not that many people who kind of that I get a chance to meet, especially in product, who kind of are sort of doing that whole spectrum. And I'm sure there's a lot of them. I just haven't had a chance to meet them, or they haven't expressed that to me. And so I really appreciate you coming on. And yeah. Thanks,
a lot
Patrick.
of fun. Thank you.
I hope you had fun.
It was awesome.
And
cheers
to all of the no, you can't cheers with an empty bottle.
This one's not. This one has like a little bit.
Oh, okay. Well, cheers.